My name is Morgan Thompson. I am 32 years old. 1 month ago, I stood under the crystal chandelier of my parents' ballroom in Greenwich, Connecticut, listening to my father praise my younger brother Jason in front of 200 guests. Then he handed him a check for $1.3 million to help with his new home. After the applause, he turned to me and said, "Morgan chose art over real estate, but not everyone needs to be a winner." The air didn't move. People laughed softly. I smiled with my teeth but not my eyes. No one noticed. I stood there holding an empty champagne glass stomach hollow like the flute in my hand. Jason has always been the chosen one. At 6, he won a gold medal for backstroke at a state meet. They hired a private coach the next week. At 12, he scored above the 99th percentile on the SSAT. They renovated the guest wing into a home study just for him. By 18, he was off to Harvard full-ride family car, gifted with a red bow parked in the driveway. When I got into RISD for illustration, with a partial scholarship, my father called it a charming detour. He said artists starve. He said business is where real impact happens. I ended up at NYU Stern instead, the safe option. I was told one day I'd thank them, but no one thanked me when I stayed late cleaning up after Jason's graduation party. No one thanked me when I took the train back from Queens after babysitting Jason's dog because he had a meeting in London. No one thanked me when I helped Mom redo her donor gala invitations at midnight because her graphic designer flaked. I designed them for free. She said they looked decent. She never mentioned them again. I learned to keep the peace, to be helpful, useful, predictable. I was the one who knew where the spare batteries were, who paid the electric bill at Grandma's place when the family trust forgot, who brought cookies to hospital waiting rooms and took calls at 2 a.m. when my father needed to vent about a board member. I never asked for anything in return. They thought I had nothing going on. They said Morgan's good with kids. They said she still paints. They said it like I was stuck, like I never grew up. They didn't know I was building something. In a fourth-floor walk-up in Brooklyn above a laundromat and below a family of insomniac twins, I had turned my living room into a studio for underserved kids. I called it Art Access. I found used easels on Craigslist. I bought brushes with freelance money. I ran workshops on Saturdays and taught color theory with Crayola sets. When the pandemic hit, I moved classes online. 3 of my students placed in the state's Emerging Voices Youth Exhibition. One of them cried when he won. His parents never let him use the dining room table for art before that. That is when I started realizing something. While I was folding chairs and fixing Wi-Fi routers for my parents' charity events, I was also growing a small, quiet power. It didn't come with checks or champagne. It came with purpose. I started tracking every dollar I spent. I logged how many hours I gave away to the family each month. At 29, I ran the numbers and realized that in the last 3 years, I had contributed more than $18,000 in unpaid design work, event labor, and emotional triage. My father said, "Family does not bill family." He was right. We just let one side bleed. At 31, I stopped explaining myself. I stopped offering. I began saying no, first softly, then clearly. The strange thing is, no one noticed, but Grandma Rose did. Rose Thompson is my father's mother. Widowed young, tough as old nails. She once told me she made her first $5,000 in the 70s by flipping flea market jewelry in Manhattan. She never played favorites. She called Jason efficient. She called me perceptive. She came to every one of my open studios, even when they were in converted basements or under blinking fluorescent lights. She always brought lemon drops and asked thoughtful questions. When I got my first local grant from the Brooklyn Arts Council, she framed the letter and sent it back to me with a sticky note that said, "Put this somewhere, Jason will see it." She laughed like a storm. She asked questions that no one else bothered with. When she learned she had pancreatic cancer, she refused to tell the family for 2 months. She told me first. She said she needed a confidant, not a committee. That summer, we talked a lot about legacy. She said inheritance should build futures, not just extend dynasties. She said her trust would reflect her values. I didn't ask for anything, I just listened. At the engagement party, the night of the $1 million check, and the humiliation toast, I stayed until the waiters began stacking chairs. I helped one of them carry trash bags to the bin. His name was Lucas. He was studying digital animation. He said his family did not support his major either. I gave him my email. In the call home, Grandma said to me, "Quiet ones build deeper roots." She looked tired, but her voice was calm. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from her estate lawyer. She had created a foundation. Its mission was to fund community-based arts education across the city. The foundation would hold $15 million in assets. I had been named as its director. She passed away 3 days after the paperwork was finalized. My parents were shocked. Jason looked confused. Mom cried. Dad asked for a meeting with the lawyer. I declined. This is not revenge. This is the line in the sand. This is about boundaries. About refusing to disappear quietly so someone else can look bigger. This is the part where I step forward without flinching. And they still have no idea what is coming. Subscribe. You will want to hear what happens when I own the thing they want most, when the rules of our family finally flip. I grow up in a house where everything is polished. Wood floors, family reputations, expectations. My parents believe success is earned through excellence and measured in net worth. They use that word a lot. Measured. Everything must be accounted for, except how they treat me. From the outside, the Thompsons look like perfection. Dad runs Thompson Luxury Properties, a boutique firm dealing in waterfront estates and legacy developments. Mom hosts donor galas and serves on 3 art museum boards, though I never see her touch a paintbrush. Jason and I attend Fairfield Preparatory Academy, a school so exclusive, it has its own crest and Latin motto. Jason thrives there. I survive. The difference between us starts small. A tennis trophy at age 10. Jason wins his age division. Dad takes him out for a steak dinner. I win a statewide poster competition. The school hangs my art in the auditorium. Mom says, "That is cute, sweetie. We should frame it." She never does. At 12, Jason is accepted into a junior Ivy summer camp. The tuition is $7,000. My parents pay it without blinking. That same summer, I ask for a $300 art workshop in Manhattan. They say it is a waste of money. I take books out from the library instead. At 18, Jason gets into Harvard with a full scholarship. My parents buy him a $90,000 BMW as a congratulations gift. I get into the Rhode Island School of Design partial scholarship. They tell me to consider NYU business instead. They say it is safer, more practical. I listen. I always listen. In college, Jason studies economics. His internships are hand-picked through Dad's network. Mine are unpaid. I spend weekends helping Mom organize silent auctions. I design brochures for her charity events, sometimes with 24-hour turnaround. She compliments them, then sends edits with no thank you. I tell myself she is just stressed. I tell myself I am being helpful. By 24, Jason is hired as Vice President of Emerging Markets at Thompson Luxury. He gets a $450,000 starting salary, plus equity. I get a $52,000 analyst role at Henley Capital. I work under a manager who calls me Marlene for 2 weeks before correcting himself. I cry in the bathroom every other Tuesday. I tell no one. Jason moves into a brownstone in Tribeca. I share a third-floor walk-up with peeling walls and 1 working radiator. Jason decorates with the help of a lifestyle consultant. I thrift everything and spend hours patching floorboards myself. I call it character. He calls mine a phase. Over the next 5 years, I build a quiet record of reliability. I design promotional booklets for Dad's development projects. I take no fee. He says it builds trust. I create a donor slide deck for Mom's gala. She forwards it to her board without mentioning my name. I clean up after Jason's dog when his assistant forgets. I house sit. I tutor his friend's daughter for the SAT. When Grandma needs her prescriptions renewed, I handle it. I do it all silently. It becomes normal. By 29, I have lost track of how many hours I have donated to my family. One night, I stay up late and try to calculate it. I estimate at least 300 unpaid hours in 5 years. If I billed market rate, that would be nearly $30,000. I stare at the number. Then I close the spreadsheet. I do not know what to do with that truth. What I do know is that when I need something, the math is different. At 30, I apply for a community arts grant. I ask Mom if she can write a letter of support. She says she is too busy. I ask Dad if he can connect me with a family friend who works in urban development. He says he does not want to mix business and hobbies. Jason promises to look into it. He never follows up. I stop asking. That same year, Jason makes a $3.8 million deal on a development site near the Hudson. Dad calls it visionary. I finish a commissioned mural for a youth center and get paid $2,000. No one calls it anything. By this point, Grandma Rose has started asking different questions. She watches quietly during family dinners. She listens when Jason jokes that I am still playing with finger paint. She smiles tightly when Dad interrupts me to tell a story about Jason's last golf tournament. Then she pulls me aside one night after dessert and asks, "Are you tired of being invisible?" I say yes, then I feel guilty. Then I realize I am not wrong. Later, she tells me something I never forgot. She says people forget that silence is not consent. Sometimes it is containment. Sometimes it is protection. Sometimes it is strategy. I begin to see myself differently. At 31, I make my first real decision. I stop doing free labor. I design a brand package for a nonprofit friend and charge market rate. I launch a small side project teaching art to kids on Saturdays. I call it Art Access. I rent a co-working space for the workshops. I cover the insurance. I do all the paperwork myself. It costs me $1,200 to get started. I do not ask anyone for help. At first, only 6 kids show up, then 8, then 12. Some of them take 2 buses to get there. I buy snacks, I make lesson plans, I design flyers and hand them out at libraries. By month 3, we have a waiting list. I start documenting the progress. I take photos, I get testimonials. I apply for a city arts grant. It is denied. But something else happens. A journalist from a local paper sees our flyer and asks to do a feature. I say yes. The article runs with the headline, "Local Artist Builds Creative Bridge for Underserved Youth." There is a picture of me sitting cross-legged on a paint-stained tarp with 3 kids holding paper masks. The quote beneath it reads, "Sometimes all you need is space to make something that matters." Jason texts me a screenshot. "Nice PR. You finally branding yourself." I do not respond. A week later, a stranger shows up at the studio. He is quiet, observant. He introduces himself as Daniel. He runs a small arts-focused foundation that partners with community initiatives. He says he read the article. He asks if I have ever thought about scaling up. I say yes, I always have. But I did not think anyone would help. He nods. Then he says something that sticks. "You are the only one in this space doing the work from the inside." That night, I go home and update my bio. I change it from freelance designer to founder and director of Art Access. It is not ego. It is accuracy. Back at home, the family still sees me the same way. Morgan helps. Morgan's around. Morgan is dependable, but they are wrong. They do not know I have built something from nothing. They do not know I am laying foundations of my own. Quiet ones, but solid and growing. They will not see the shift until it is too late to stop it. Next comes the break. The moment that changes everything. It is closer than they think. It starts with a toast. That is what breaks it. Or maybe it was already broken, and I only noticed when someone said the quiet part out loud. June 14th, 2025, Jason and Charlotte's engagement party. My parents rent the main ballroom at the Greenwich Country Club. 200 guests, champagne towers, a custom neon sign that says, "The future, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson." I arrive early to help Grandma get settled. Her health is fragile now. She uses a cane. The family pretends not to see the weight she is carrying. I do not pretend. Jason is glowing. Charlotte looks perfect. Everyone claps when Dad takes the mic. He praises Jason's drive, his loyalty, his vision. Then he pulls out a white envelope. He says, "Consider this your launch pad." He hands them a check. $1.3 million for their first home. The crowd gasps, applause, someone whistles. Then he looks at me. His tone shifts just enough. He says, "And of course Morgan is here too, always quietly observing. Maybe one day she will find her own path." People laugh. The mic is still on. I feel my face flush, but I keep smiling. I nod. I clap. I look at Jason, who avoids my eyes. That night, I help stack empty glasses while Mom talks to the caterers. I clean up wrapping paper no one else touches. When I finally get back to the guest bedroom, I sit in the dark. I do not cry. I do not scream. I open my laptop. I run numbers. If I take 2 commissions a month at $800 each plus 1 brand consultation, for $1,200, that is $2,800 a month. Rent is $1,450. Supplies average $400. The rest covers food and studio costs. I can make it work, barely. I make a decision. From this moment forward, I do not ask them for anything. No favors, no introductions, no loans. I do not offer help unless I choose to. I stop volunteering my time. I stop smoothing their messes. 2 days later, Jason sends a group message asking if I can review the design for his wedding invitations. I say no. I do not explain. I get no response. By July, I leave the family WhatsApp group. I unfollow their business accounts. I turn down a last-minute ask from Mom to proofread her speech. She sends a question mark. Then silence. I expect someone to call. They do not. I pour that silence into work. I redesign the Art Access logo. I meet with Daniel, the foundation director, who offered help after the article. He connects me with a mentor who runs nonprofit operations. I build a 3-year plan. I apply for a microgrant from the city. I get it. $5,000. I buy 4 easels, a new kiln, and 4 months of insurance coverage. I convert part of my apartment into a storage space for materials. I turn a forgotten retail spot in Crown Heights into a temporary studio. I sublet the back room. The tenant is a florist named Lucia. We split utilities. It works. I teach on weekends. I work freelance during the week. My days are long. My back hurts. But I sleep better. The difference is choice. Jason launches a luxury condo project in the Hamptons. My parents post renderings online. They tag him. I say nothing. One of my students wins 2nd place in a citywide contest. His mom brings empanadas for the whole class. She cries when I tell her his tuition will be covered by the prize money. I take a photo of him holding the certificate. I keep it on my desk. By December, my Patreon reaches 137 subscribers. $8 per month per person. That is $1,096 monthly. Not huge, but consistent. I build a mailing list. I send monthly updates. I share progress photos. I get messages from people who say they wish they had a space like this growing up. I save every one of them. At a small pop-up show in March, I sell 3 original pieces. One of them to a collector from Detroit. He says, "Your work feels like memory without nostalgia." I thank him. I do not fully understand the compliment, but I accept it. Meanwhile, Jason is in headlines, zoning delays, local pushback on the coastal impact of his Hamptons project. My parents do not post as often. I see press releases about revised timelines. Jason seems tired when he does show up. His usual polish is fraying. That spring, I get a call from Grandma. She says she wants to meet. Just me. We have tea at her garden table. She is wearing her old navy sweater and pearls. She tells me she has spoken to her lawyer. She wants to set up something formal, something lasting. She says I am done pretending everything is fine. She tells me about her assets, her will, her plan. I listen, I nod. She hands me a folder. Inside are draft documents for a foundation. Its mission is to provide long-term funding for community-based arts education. She wants me to run it. The number shocks me. $15 million. I look at her. She says, "You will do more with it than anyone else. That is all that matters." I sign nothing that day. I take the folder home. I read every word. 2 weeks later, I meet her lawyer. We talk for 2 hours. I ask questions. I ask about governance oversight sustainability. I ask about succession planning. I use the right terms because I have spent the last 6 months learning them. The lawyer is impressed. I take notes. I ask for time to think. He says, "You are the only person she trusts with this." I walk home feeling something unfamiliar. Control. Quiet, but real. Jason gets engaged again. Same venue, new catering, more updates on social media. I do not attend the tasting. I do not respond to the new invitation design. Instead, I finish a grant proposal. I submit a partnership application to the city. I follow up on a donation request from a regional supplier. At 32, I own my time. I start preparing for what comes next. The moment where they see what I have built. The moment where silence ends. It will not be loud, but it will be clear. They are about to realize the ground has already shifted. They just have not felt the quake yet. By the summer of 2026, everything looks the same from the outside. But underneath the foundation is different. I no longer chase their approval. I chase clarity, direction, impact. Art Access moves out of the temporary space and into a leased storefront in Crown Heights. It is small but full of light. I paint the walls myself. I install pegboards and color-coded bins. I raise $12,000 through a local match campaign. I document every donation with receipts and thank you cards. I track every expense in QuickBooks. I learn to write clean proposals. I meet deadlines. I do not wait for praise. Daniel connects me with a nonprofit strategist named Karima. She helps me apply for a capacity-building grant. We build a 3-year operational plan. The grant is approved in August, $25,000. I hire an assistant. I put systems in place. In October, we host our first community art fair. More than 100 people attend. There are tables with clay sculptures, watercolors, block prints. The kids give tours of their work. Parents bring food. One of the city council aides stops by. He asks questions. He takes a flyer. He says, "This is the kind of thing we need in every district." I start gaining visibility. In December, I collaborate with a street artist who goes by Graphics. We create a limited run of digital pieces. The sale generates $42,700 in royalties. I reinvest most of it into a scholarship fund. The rest goes into an emergency reserve. Meanwhile, my family starts noticing. Not because they care, but because others do. Jason's Hamptons project hits another delay. Environmental groups oppose the development. Permits stall. Investors start asking questions. The public image starts to crack. I read the articles but say nothing. In March, I get a call from a curator at Pier 29 Gallery. She saw our community work on Instagram. She asks if I would consider a solo show. I meet her at the space. White walls, tall ceilings, clean light. I walk through slowly. I nod. We agree on a summer exhibition. I title it Fracture and Form. I spend 3 months preparing. I work in silence. I experiment with layered canvas ink washes, metallic dust. I create 9 pieces. Each one speaks to the idea of visible tension. Internal pressure, the beauty of quiet resistance. The opening night is July 18th. Attendance exceeds expectations. 200 people, press, collectors, teachers, students, grandma's old friends. The gallery sells out in one night. Total revenue crosses $112,000. I donate 20% to local youth programs. A journalist writes a feature titled The Quiet Power of Morgan Thompson. I read it once, then I file it away. The same week, I receive a message from Grandma's lawyer. The final paperwork is ready. The Rose Thompson Foundation for Arts Access is fully established. $15 million in assets. I'm named executive director. I sign the documents. I meet with the board. I present a year 1 roadmap. I keep everything clean and compliant. Word spreads fast. My parents find out through a press release. They are not happy. Jason texts me. He says, "You could have told us." I do not respond. He follows with, "We should talk." I wait 3 days before I reply. We meet for coffee in the city. He looks tired. The pressure is visible now. His voice is slower. He talks about delays, investor fatigue, personal stress. He says he wants to be more than a real estate dealmaker. He says he feels like a product, not a person. I listen, I nod, I say, "You still have choices." He asks if the foundation could partner with one of his projects, something for image alignment. I tell him we only back community-led proposals with direct youth benefit. I keep my tone neutral. He nods. I can see the disappointment. Later that week, I receive a certified letter. A request from my parents to meet regarding the foundation. I decline. I know what they want. They want control, influence. They want to shape the narrative. I have no interest in reshaping anything for them. Instead, I focus on building forward. I open a second art access location in the Bronx. I partner with 2 local schools. We run programs twice a week. Enrollment fills in under 48 hours. I train 2 part-time coordinators. I develop a teaching manual. I hire a bookkeeper. Jason's project suffers another setback. A community meeting turns hostile. Videos circulate online. Commenters question the ethics of the development. Mom posts a long message defending him. It receives more backlash than support. Grandma's health declines sharply. I visit her weekly. She keeps a notebook by her side. She writes poetry now. Some of it is rough. Some of it is beautiful. She says writing makes her feel lighter. I sit with her in silence. I bring lemon drops. I hold her hand. In September, she asks me to read one of her poems at the Foundation's formal launch gala. She says she may not make it. I tell her I will. The gala is scheduled for October 3rd. The guest list includes city council members, press local artists, educators, and youth program leads. I invite Jason and my parents, not out of obligation, out of clarity. By this point, I am used to operating independently, but this event marks a public shift. The carriage house we purchased for our flagship space is historically zoned. It sits adjacent to a stalled development project, Jason's project. The irony is not lost on me. The gala marks more than a celebration. It is a formal claim to space. It announces that our work is not temporary, that we are not going away. 3 days before the event, I get a call from a policy analyst on the city board. She says the partnership proposal I submitted in June is approved. It grants us 3 years of matching support for educational expansion. I hang up. I take a breath. I sit with the weight of it. I think about that night in the guest bedroom, the one where I first ran the numbers, the one where I made a decision. I remember the silence that followed. That silence made this possible. Now the volume is changing. The city is watching. The family is watching. The ground is shifting. The story is not theirs anymore. It is mine. And soon everyone will see it. The launch gala for the Rose Thompson Foundation takes place on October 3rd, 2027. The location is deliberate. We host it at the restored Carriage House in Manhattan, the new flagship studio for art access. The building sits on the edge of a contested development zone connected to Harbor Point Jason's stalled luxury project. The zoning tension has been quietly building for months. I'm aware of every detail. We send formal invitations to elected officials, grant partners, journalists, and members of the Community Advisory Board. I also send 3 invitations to my parents and 1 to Jason. I do not expect a response, but I want everything on record. Every name, every role, no omissions. The event is scheduled for 6 p.m. The program begins at 7. I arrive early and walk the space in silence. The restoration took 6 months. The team preserved the original brick and timber beams. We added gallery lighting and refinished the floors. A large canvas hangs behind the podium. It reads, "Art belongs where people live." By 6:30, the space fills with voices. Council members shake hands with student artists. Donors browse the youth exhibition. Local teachers recognize their students' names on tags. Grandma cannot attend. Her health has declined sharply. She calls me the night before and says, "Make it count." Then she says goodbye. At 7:05, I take the stage. I welcome everyone. I speak briefly about the mission. I highlight our numbers. 2 studios, 18 part-time staff, 238 students enrolled, 3,000 hours of instruction delivered. I thank the board. I thank the families. Then I introduce the policy analyst from the City Education Committee. She announces the matching partnership grant. 3 years, $250,000 annually. She says our program will now expand to 5 boroughs. The room erupts in applause. Flashbulbs go off. This is the moment I planned for. But it is not the only reveal. At 7:40, a council member takes the stage to recognize a secondary impact of our work. She holds up a copy of our carriage house restoration plan. She commends the project for preserving historical infrastructure while blocking high-density displacement. She calls it a model of ethical land use. There is a murmur in the crowd. Some people know. Some are starting to connect the dots. I step forward again. I thank the council member. Then I clarify. The Rose Thompson Foundation purchased the Carriage House property in May. It is now protected under local historical preservation law. Under current zoning statutes, the adjacent parcel cannot proceed with commercial development unless the surrounding impact zone complies with educational use exemptions. That includes Harbor Point. I see my father's face at the back of the room. I did not notice him enter. Jason is beside him. My mother is 2 steps behind. Their expressions do not shift. Not yet. I continue. We received a development request from Thompson Luxury Properties in August. They proposed collaboration in exchange for construction access. We reviewed the proposal. We declined. Instead, we submitted an alternative plan. The foundation would consider granting conditional access if the developer committed to 3 requirements. First, convert 30% of the proposed units into low-income artist housing. Second, incorporate LEED Platinum certified environmental standards. Third, fund 5 years of art education programs across 2 neighboring school zones. I hold up the printed Memorandum of Understanding. I state that it remains unsigned. I place it on the podium. Now the room is quiet. I speak calmly. We are not obstructing progress. We are defining it. If a project cannot coexist with community need, then it does not deserve the land it claims. Jason steps forward from the back. He asks to speak. I nod. He takes the mic. He does not defend the project. He does not attack me. He clears his throat and says, "Our firm underestimated the people this land already serves. We will review the proposal again." That is the first honest sentence I have heard him say in public in 10 years. My father says nothing. My mother is visibly tense. She clutches her clutch bag like it is a lifeline. I see a reporter snapping photos. I let it happen. A foundation staff member brings out a framed plaque. It will be mounted above the entry to the carriage house. It reads, "Dedicated to Rose Thompson, whose vision made this possible." I do not cry. Instead, I walk off stage and into the crowd. I thank attendees. I answer questions. I smile at students showing their work. I avoid my parents. At 9:15, I step outside for air. Jason follows. He says, "I did not know this is what you were building." I tell him he never asked. He nods. Then he says, "Dad is furious." I tell him that is not my responsibility. The next morning, headlines break. Community Art Foundation blocks luxury development until equity demands are met. Thompson Empire faces backlash over public confrontation with granddaughter's nonprofit. Investors withdraw from Harbor Point within 48 hours. The project loses its primary financing partner. A secondary deal falls through the next week. Jason issues a statement calling for a pause and reevaluation. My father releases nothing. Behind closed doors, Thompson Luxury begins restructuring. I hear they are seeking new leadership. My father is no longer listed on the executive board within 3 months. My parents stop contacting me. Jason sends one message a week later. It says, "You did what none of us could. You changed the direction." I do not reply. The carriage house becomes a landmark. The foundation receives 3 new grant inquiries before the end of the month. We begin planning expansion. I bring on a program director. We commission a documentary about the youth artists. I present at a national education conference. The public moment of reckoning is over, but the private shift remains. My family no longer speaks of me as lost or distracted. Now they say driven, strategic, calculated. I take no satisfaction in their adjustment. It only proves what I already knew. They never saw me until I made it impossible not to. They never listened until silence turned into structure, and they never respected the boundary until it became law. It is November now. The air carries that sharp edge that always comes before snow. The city feels slower, or maybe I have just stopped rushing. Every morning, I unlock the carriage house. The key slides into place smoothly. The building smells like linseed oil and wood polish. The floor creaks in familiar spots. Sunlight filters through the east-facing windows and spills across the long tables. I take 10 minutes to walk through the space alone before anyone else arrives. By 9 a.m., the studio fills with sound. Laughter, questions, brushes tapping water jars. One of our students is preparing a portfolio for a scholarship. Another is sculpting a figure from recycled wire. I review lesson plans, answer emails, check grant deliverables. This is the work now, real work, measurable, repeatable, meaningful. Our team has grown. We have 22 active instructors, 5 program coordinators, 2 accountants, and 1 communications director. We have 3 sites across the city and a mobile program that reaches schools without art funding. We served over 600 students this year. We issued 72 scholarships. Our youth showcase in October drew over 500 visitors. A council member called it the most hopeful event she had attended all year. I do not post about it much. I prefer that the results speak first. My parents do not reach out. Jason sends an occasional update. He has stepped away from the firm. He is completing an executive MBA in environmental development. He says he wants to rebuild from different principles. I believe him, slowly. Mom is hosting smaller events now. Quiet brunches, fewer fundraisers. I see photos of her with new circles. No one mentions the gala. No one mentions me. Dad is out of the headlines. The firm has rebranded. He no longer appears on the leadership page. I hear from a former assistant that he spends most of his time at the lake house. I imagine the quiet there is thick. I do not feel bitterness anymore, just clarity. I spent years asking them to see me. Now I realize it was never about them. It was about me deciding that I mattered, even if they never changed their minds. When I think of Grandma, I remember her last poem. She titled it Without Permission. It ends with the line I built without asking and stayed without bowing. It is printed in brass and mounted beside the studio entrance. Students walk under it every day. Most of them do not know who she was, but they understand what she gave them. Some days, I sit by the window with my tea and think about the night I ran the numbers. I remember how tired I felt, how small. Now the math looks different. This year, the foundation granted $312,000 in education support. Our operating reserve has increased by 18%. Our annual audit received a clean opinion. We are on track to fund expansion into 2 new districts next spring. We are ahead of schedule. We are stable. That word means more to me than success. Stability is what I needed all along. Not approval, not celebration. Just the freedom to build without fear of collapse. People often ask how I stayed calm when the family turned against me. The truth is, they never turned. They never thought they had to. I was just a fixture. The one who helped, the one who handled things. But fixtures loosen eventually. I found power in restraint. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted self-respect. I do not raise my voice. I do not send angry emails. I do not write takedowns. I write programs, policies, budgets. I create systems that work whether I am in the room or not. That is how I measure impact now. I think about the kids who come through our doors. Many of them carry silence like I used to. Not sadness, just caution. Waiting to see if they will be heard. We make sure they are. One of our seniors just got into a pre-college art program at Parsons. Her mother called me crying. She said no one in their family had ever made it past high school. She asked if she could come to the studio and shake my hand. I told her yes. We had tea and sat quietly for a while. No speeches, just peace. That is the legacy I care about. Not the buildings with names on them. Not the parties. The quiet handoffs. The invisible yes. The lives that shift without applause. I do not regret the years I gave. They taught me to see, to listen, to survive. But I do not return to those rooms anymore. I am done being tolerated. I live where I'm respected. Once in a while, people still try to frame this as revenge. As a daughter outshining her family. As a rejection of legacy. They miss the point entirely. This is not rejection, it is redirection. The foundation will continue long after I step away. That is the plan. We are training new leaders. We are building succession into our structure. No one should be irreplaceable. Not even me. Because the real power is not in being seen. It is in seeing clearly and building anyway. If your story sounds like mine, if you have ever been told to wait your turn to shrink for the sake of peace, to smile for the sake of appearances, I hope you know it does not have to stay that way. You do not need their permission to start. You do not need their support to continue. You only need your own decision. Draw the line, hold it steady, and when they try to erase it, draw it again. Thicker, sharper, permanent. That is what I did. That is what I still do. Thank you for following this story. If any part of it echoes something in your life, feel free to share it in the comments. Your voice might be the story someone else needs to hear. And if you are still in the quiet phase, still building, know this. You are not behind. You are just getting ready. Story 2. My family blocked me from the group chat during my wedding. Then I came across pictures of them on vacation in Hawaii. Caption the families that are now complete. I only sent one message. While it lasts, enjoy it. I removed my name from the family business that day. The payroll account was frozen. My dad received a call from the Internal Revenue Service a week later. He knocked on my door for 20 minutes that night. When I opened it, it wasn't just that they weren't there that surprised me. They blocked me from the family group chat at that precise moment on my wedding day. I recall waiting outside the location immediately following the ceremony. Everyone was making their way to the reception hall as the sun was lowering and the sky had a gentle golden hue. Emma was laughing with her bridesmaids about the wind catching her veil. In my pocket, my phone buzzed. When I looked, I saw that it said, "You have been removed from Smith Family Core." I had assumed it was another congratulations message. No context, no warning, simply gone. As if it were written in a foreign language, I gazed at the screen. My initial thought was that it was an error. Perhaps Caleb accidentally tapped something. Perhaps Dad was trying to change the group photo or mute notifications because he was confused. That group chat has existed for 8 years. Birthdays and holidays, news about the family business. Everything passed through it. However, when I attempted to open it, nothing. I couldn't get in. At that point, I became aware that they were absent. Their table was empty of chairs. As a result, the chairs were arranged precisely. Mark, Caleb, Mom, and Dad are all empty. The waiters were constantly checking for tardiness. Alan, my closest friend, asked if they were stuck in traffic. I simply shrugged. I did not want to spoil the night. The fact that they had RSVP'd more than once made matters worse. They had filled out the online form, texted to confirm again the previous month, and even discussed their attire. My mother went to great lengths to avoid conflict with the bridesmaids. Mark invited his girlfriend to attend. Yes, I replied. They weren't merely anticipated. The damn plan included them. Before taking family pictures, the photographer kept asking if we wanted to wait for them. I continued to put it off. Eventually, we simply left them out. During dinner, Jody asked in a whisper if there had been any interaction between us. I told her I had no idea. That was the reality. I didn't receive a response until the 3rd day of our honeymoon. Before going to our cabin rental, we were in Napa only for a few tastings. I opened Instagram to see Emma selecting a bottle, merely by habit. Then they appeared standing on a Maui beach. They are all 4 smiling, holding cocktails, and wearing matching floral prints. Even his father, who never takes pictures, had Mark's arm around him. The caption said that the family was now complete. I merely sat there. No passion, no tantrum, simply empty. 2 asides. At first, she remained silent. Simply place her hand over mine. I informed her that I had one item to send. From her phone, I launched WhatsApp. She typed one message while still in the group. While it lasts, enjoy it. I opened my laptop after that. Smith wrote, My dad wasn't the only one in logistics. I had been making it a reality for the past 6 years. I was the one who got us online, even though we were co-owners. Got the job at Walmart. Half of the logistics were automated. For transactions exceeding $10,000, I would configure the dual signature protocol. He had no idea how to use it. I deleted my name from the company registration after logging in. I put my shares in a holding pattern that resulted in their freezing. I also froze the payroll account, which is crucial. Withdrawals must be approved by me. That Friday was payroll due. I stayed out of the spotlight. Did not speak up. Let the quiet do the talking. I received a call from an unidentified number a week later. Didn't respond to Dad's CPA's voicemail. The IRS had apparently noticed some disparities, missing paperwork and 2 years' worth of unpaid state taxes, and the amusing part, they couldn't have produced half of the necessary financial records without me. Before I even got to the front door that night, I heard the knocking. 20 minutes straight. I took a while to respond. I held him up. He was standing there when I opened the door, looking red-faced and sweating, as if he had been in hell. And what he said first: "What did you do?" For a few seconds, I allowed the silence to linger. He anticipated that I would recoil, defend myself, or perhaps even offer an apology. I simply waited while leaning against the doorframe. He moved forward, as if he were going to enter. I remained motionless. "The payroll was frozen by you. Are you aware of your actions?" I gave a nod. "Yes, I am fully aware of my actions." He would get somewhere if he continued to talk like that. Claimed that the drivers threatened to walk. That was already in the warehouse crew's possession. Penalties for missing deadlines were demanded by 2 clients. Claimed that because my credentials were linked to the online reporting, the accountant was unable to even file. The one thing he believed would shake me was then dropped. This morning the IRS called. 5 years' worth of returns are being examined. 5. They believe we have been concealing our earnings. If this isn't fixed, we're all going to collapse. That word struck a different chord. We're all falling. I reminded him that the one guy they excluded from the family chat on his wedding day was not included in this. Apparently, that included everyone who could travel to Hawaii and pretend I didn't exist while grinning for the camera. He attempted to explain that it was simply a bad moment and that they needed space and that it wasn't personal. My wedding gave you the space you needed. That momentarily silenced him. He quickly changed to anger, claimed that I was being childish petty and discarding everything we had worked so hard to build. Then he took a folded piece of paper out of his jacket. After weighing it once, he threw it between us on the floor. I signed sheet the same document as 3 years ago, and it was a copy. I had forgotten a clause that was hidden in the early partnership filings. Under certain circumstances, it granted him some partial authority to override financial freezes. However, those requirements necessitated evidence of carelessness or deliberate injury. He was going to accuse me of undermining the business, that I did it maliciously. Even though he was bluffing, it was enough to keep the days that followed interesting. His attorney sent a cease and desist letter by Monday. I had responded to mine by Tuesday with a thorough audit of all the financial decisions I had made since joining, including the ones I had flagged over the years, all of which I had screenshots of, and several of which had verged on tax fraud. I kept most of it from Emma. Although she was aware of the outline, I spared her the anxiety. Before my family's chaos spilt into our new life, I wanted her to have at least a few days of peace after we returned from our honeymoon. For the first time in 2 months, Mom texted on Wednesday, "Could we please have a conversation? This is becoming unmanageable." No explanation, no apology. A tiny, delicate olive branch tossed like a discarded tissue. The situation changed by Thursday when the CPA began contacting me directly, even though I didn't reply. Stated quietly that the IRS was investigating more than just the company. They were investigating Caleb, a phony vendor, offshore accounts, and Dad's personal finances. The IRS wasn't merely snooping, they were hunting. And I still hadn't done a single thing. Emma and I were wrapping up our lunch when the call came in. For the first time since the wedding, we had been organizing thank you notes at the dinner table. Things seemed to be starting to calm down. My phone buzzed with an unknown number while we were making jokes about who had the worst handwriting. I took a step back and replied. Richard was the one, a CPA, the family business, and a man I had only spoken to twice in 6 years, and only when something was amiss. He wasted no time. "Listen, David, you should be aware of what's going on, even though I know you're no longer involved." He spoke in a sharp click. I didn't even inquire about how he obtained my number. I simply listened. As it happens, the payroll account did more than just bounce a few paychecks when I froze it. It interrupted a mid-transfer transaction that the bank's compliance team had flagged for audit. The account belonged to a shell company that purportedly maintained fleet software. However, that vendor was non-existent. The vendor's founding documents listed the address as a mailbox store in Nevada. Caleb. At that point, everything began to make sense. Why did Caleb always participate in the business in such a casual manner? Why he never had to describe his actual actions? "How bad is it?" I asked Richard. After a brief silence, he stated that the IRS had now referred the matter to a criminal investigator. They examined every transaction over the previous 5 years, not just one. My father had used my digital signature on a number of documents that I hadn't even seen, and it seems that my withdrawal had revealed the chain of irregularities. Fake invoices, inflated contracts, and unreported foreign income. I sat with it for a while after hanging up. I could have left at that moment, see them burn. However, I was still in charge of the backup server, which I had configured for complete financial transparency. It contained all of my emails, contract, invoices, and approvals, and nobody could access it without my password. I simply locked the system remotely. I didn't even need to remove anything. Emma asked if there was a problem when she noticed me working. I informed her that there was no point in trying to fix it at this time. I received a text from a Jody later that night. The IRS called again and said, "Your dad is in a spiral. Caleb hasn't had any sleep. Your mother is going crazy." It was not gratifying, not just yet. It seemed inevitable. Then I heard a knock at about 9 o'clock at night. Before I looked, I knew it was him. Dad was standing there. The same outfit as last week. His hair was unkempt, as if he had spent the entire day rubbing it through. I didn't have to invite him inside before he accepted. A thick envelope was just thrust into my chest. "Go through it. In all of this, you are not innocent. Right here." I remained at the door and slowly opened it. There were printed emails with excerpts of correspondence from 2 years ago between me and a logistics client. I recall that transaction, though, because my name was on the approval line of a big shipment contract. A standard delivery quote was approved by me. He was the one who later changed the invoice to conceal excess money and inflate the delivery cost. If the IRS sees those emails out of context, they won't just come after me, he said, leaning in. They will also pursue me. He believed that I would drop everything because I would be afraid. Unfreeze the accounts, log back in, and assist them in cleaning up the mess. Not even blinking. I wish you luck in that endeavor. I said, "You changed those figures." "Not me." His voice changed. After attempting to persuade me, he said that we could clean it up together if I returned right away. Claimed that they erred by skipping the wedding and that it is still a family business. However, we can get past that. He had never even brought it up before. Andy believed that was sufficient. All of this would be resolved if he made a passing reference to leaving me on the most significant day of my life. I simply gave a headshake. "That bridge was destroyed by you. You're angry now. The fire is getting bigger." He remained motionless for an additional moment, as if he had something more to say. He turned and proceeded down the driveway after that. I locked the door after closing it. Not to be safe, to illustrate a point. Our former legal counsel sent me an email the following morning. It seems that my dad was attempting to raise liquid cash by selling company shares to a third party in a panic sale, but he was unsuccessful. Every significant asset still had my name attached to it, and the investigation was now as well. I anticipated repercussions, irate texts, threats, and perhaps even a last-ditch voicemail from my mother attempting to mend things. Hearing from someone I hadn't spoken to in more than 10 years was unexpected. I received an email on Friday morning from someone I hadn't seen since high school. My dad's estranged younger brother is Uncle Grant. When I was still in college, he had been forced out of the company. I was always told that he caused issues with the board and mismanaged funds. He sent a brief email. I heard what was going on. I waited for someone to notice it at last. "Meet me if you want the full picture. Everything is mine." At first, I didn't respond. I had no idea how to interpret it. Emma insisted that I go, stated that perhaps knowing what I was truly up against would be helpful at the very least. So I went to a diner 2 towns over and met him. He didn't appear resentful, but he did look older than I remembered, simply exhausted. Before our coffee had even arrived, he slid a manila folder across the table. Copies of old bank transfers emails, and one document in particular that made my stomach turn were all inside. It had to do with agreement, day-to-day 8 years ago with Uncle Grant's and my dad's signature. The rationale behind the acquisition, not poor management, silence, not failure. Uncle Grant had reportedly learnt that Dad and Caleb had been using surplus warehouse lease income to fund a side venture, a private shell company operating under Mom's name that purchased and sold commercial trucks at exorbitant prices, primarily to our own business. The scam was full circle, draining the company's resources while enriching themselves. Grant would disappear and never talk about it again after learning that it offered him a payout on one condition. He kept the documents in case something went wrong, but he accepted the deal. Now that the walls were closing in and the IRS was circling, he thought it was time for someone else to find out. I took it all. I scanned it. Twice backed it up. I thanked him and walked away. The following day, I received a request from Smith and Rose's legal team to attend a mediation call immediately. They wanted to get everything settled as soon as possible. Offer me a discreet buyout of all my shares in return for granting me access to the servers and locked accounts. I didn't pay attention to the message. That same afternoon, Emma came home with news of her own. While shopping downtown, she ran into one of the warehouse workers, Diego, a guy who'd been with the company since I joined. He told her something strange. Apparently, my dad had told the employees that I was the reason no one was getting paid, that I'd sabotaged the system. After a fight with my brothers, he was trying to turn them against me, said I was bitter and unstable. I didn't even get mad. I just laughed because by Sunday something happened that none of them expected. The IRS didn't just freeze the business accounts, they froze the personal ones too. My dad's, my mom's, and Caleb's, all pending formal investigation. No access, no transfers, no warnings. Emma and I were having dinner when I got the alert. All three of them were on a list of financial holds issued as part of the wider fraud probe. They were locked out of their money. Everything. I set my foot down, leaned back, and smiled. The house of cards wasn't just falling now. It had collapsed. Monday morning, I woke up to 33 missed calls, 9 from that 10 from Mom. The rest split between Mark and Caleb. Not a single voicemail, just silent panic. By noon, I had received 2 emails from the IRS requesting copies of the backup financial records, specifically the archived correspondence contracts and vendor activity that only I could access. I didn't respond yet. I wanted them to sweat. That evening, I got an unexpected knock. Emma checked the people first. It was my mother. I hadn't seen her since Christmas 2 years ago. She always preferred to play the quiet partner in family disasters, passive smiling, never directly responsible. But this time, she was the one standing on our doorstep, gripping her purse like it was the last stable thing in her life. She asked to come in. Emma left the room. We sat in silence for a few seconds, and then she launched into a rehearsed apology. She said she didn't know the full story, that she never agreed to skip the wedding, that Dad had convinced her it would be less tense if they just went away for the weekend. She insisted she tried to call. I told her she could have tried harder, told her I'd seen the group photo, the one with the caption about the family finally being whole. She shifted gears fast, said they were in trouble, that the IRS freeze meant they couldn't pay their mortgage, their credit cards, even their groceries. She said Dad was falling apart, that Caleb had a breakdown, and that the company would be destroyed if I didn't help with everything we had built over the years. She then said something that chilled me to the bone. We are aware that there is an emergency fund. I went cold. Emma and I had arranged for that years ago. A different investment account that is in my name, bound by a trust, not even in the company's operations. We did not record it. Few people were aware of its existence. How I inquired. She paused. It's possible that your father took some bank records from when you two had joint authority. He believes that funds ought to be reinvested in the company. Without the company, you would not have had it. She spoke as though it made sense, as if she thought it was true. I got to my feet. I don't give a damn about his opinion. We own that money. On my wedding day, you all abandoned me. I owe you nothing, she pleaded, said the words literally. Please. She then made one final attempt at a card. Your dad is going to go public if you don't help. Let's say you planned this and manipulated the books, I chuckled. She winced. They wanted to drag me down with them as they were cornered and drowning. I assured her that I had no plans to halt the inquiry, that I was only holding off on sending the IRS the entire archive because I wanted to see how far they would go. After a moment of stunned silence, she walked away without saying anything more. I turned in all of the emails, backup files, transaction logs, and Uncle Grant's paperwork the following morning. After shutting down the laptop, I took Emma to brunch. Allow them to burn. The investigation officially began 3 days after I sent the archive to the IRS. I was informed that it made the news by Emma. Due to years of tax evasion, a family-owned goods company is currently under federal audit. No names were given, but anyone in the area who knew the Smiths could figure it out. Friends began sending each other texts. Some of my former coworkers contacted me, some in disbelief, some simply to say they always sensed something wasn't right. My father sent me the last message I had ever read that evening. It was a screen grab of a court document written by his lawyer, in which he accused me of violating a fiduciary duty, causing harm to the business, and putting the whole family under financial and emotional strain. He threatened to file a civil lawsuit if I didn't remove the documents. The number was blocked by me, without hesitation. I then deleted my name email profile and everything else after logging into the company portal, which was one of the few things that was still operational. Not in retaliation, not with malice, merely because the moment had come. A few hours later, Mark attempted to call. This time he left a voicemail, claimed that I had overreached, claimed that I ought to have dealt with this within the family. I misunderstood the situation, and we could have had a conversation, according to a paragraph that Caleb sent me via email. It's funny. On my wedding day, nobody wanted to talk. All of them failed to appear, not a single message. However, they discovered their voices when their house was being audited, and their accounts were frozen. I didn't respond. They all made decisions. I broke off all communication. I wasn't spiteful when I blocked them. I simply didn't want their poison to continue seeping into the things Emma and I had created. 3 months later, we relocated out of state. The town is clean now. The emergency fund was left unaltered. I resumed private consultations. Emma returned to her teaching. Jody and a few other family members kept in touch, and our life became calm, steady, and genuine. When we got together for dinner, some of our wedding friends would still bring it up. How my family did something that no one could believe. How foolish it was to put a vacation ahead of the wedding of their own son. They only care about control, and when they lose it, they lose everything according to the consensus of all. It has now been almost a year. I still occasionally receive unsolicited letters from law firms or distant cousins who are trying to catch up. I disregard them. I have a new rhythm and a new home with Emma. Now we discuss children. We take trips when we feel like it. I never imagined that we would laugh as much as we do. I have lost my anger, just finished. I occasionally tell the truth when someone asks if I miss them. I miss the person I believed them to be. However, that version never appeared, not when it was important, and I won't now either. 6 days after I had assumed that everything was behind me, I received an email that completely stopped me cold. It wasn't a notice, it was from the IRS, not a request. I'm grateful. In a formal statement, one of the case's senior agents acknowledged the importance of the information I supplied. I didn't anticipate it. It stated that several offshore accounts connected to fraudulent vendor payments, not just in my dad's name, had been found as a result of the backup records I submitted. Other colleagues were present, a few of whose names I knew from previous business gatherings. The email ended with something unexpected, even though 2 of them had already left the country. Based on the records, we will be sending out a subpoena for testimony. Although we think you were not aware of these activities, your cooperation could help us develop the case more broadly. That line caught my attention twice. My dad was no longer the only focus of this. This was larger. Emma discovered something in the mail later that afternoon. A heavy envelope. It was delivered by hand, but there was no return address. No label, no stamp. There were 2 items inside, a flash drive and a letter from Caleb. His letter was apologetic rambling and at times desperate. He claimed that Dad had lost his mind, that he was attempting to place the blame on anyone he could, and that he had coerced Caleb into creating the phony vendor accounts, about which Mom knew more than she admitted, but kept quiet out of fear of losing everything. He apologized for what transpired at the wedding and stated that he didn't want to go down with them. He was aware that I would never forgive him. However, I might eventually come to understand if the flash drive helped to balance things out. I connected it to a disposable laptop. It contained spreadsheets, voice memos, internal emails, and even a few videos. In one of them, the father was laughing while speaking with someone in another country about how the child signs everything I put in front of him. I was that person. Another showed him describing to Caleb how to avoid banking thresholds by dividing vendor payments into smaller batches. It was sealed. I sent a brief message with all of this information to the IRS contact. Another present. Emma and I sat on the porch that evening. We said very little, just observed the rolling breeze and the darkening sky. And I came to a realization. This was no longer retaliation. It was taking something away. A last cleaning out of everything that attempted to ruin what ought to have been my greatest day ever. Into a betrayed memory. It was just over now, and for good this time.